The first moments in prison were nothing like Sean had imagined. As the newly arrived inmates stepped off the transport truck, they were lined up under the scorching sun and handed their uniforms striped, itchy, and dehumanizing. The atmosphere buzzed with chaos. From the very gates, prison life introduced itself with noise, cheers, and wild energy. Inmates shouted at one another across the compound, fights broke out over petty disputes, and several groups of hardened men played cards or dice on makeshift tables, laughing loudly and sizing up the newcomers with unsettling glares. Among the commotion, Sean could feel the weight of his new reality settle on his shoulders like chains. The guards barked orders, pushing the men forward toward their designated blocks. Inside the cell block, the air was damp, heavy with the scent of sweat, metal, and old stone. Sean was escorted to his ward, which he would share with an older inmate. The man, whose body was lean but hardened from years within these walls, sat calmly on the lower bunk. His beard was long and white, and his hair, though wild, had an odd sense of dignity to it. When the guards left, the old man glanced up from the book he was reading and introduced himself with a gravelly voice. "Name's Arda," he said, offering a slow nod. Sean, still overwhelmed by the experience, remained silent. He didn't respond, didn't even look at the man. There was a long pause between them, an awkward, heavy silence. But Arda wasn't bothered. He leaned back and spoke with a kind of ease that only comes with time. "The beginning of a thing doesn't define its end," he said thoughtfully. "Purpose and vision, that's what changes the story." Sean still didn't reply, but something in Arda's voice made him pause. The old man looked up at the walls of the cell and smiled faintly. "This wall, it contains more than bricks," he said, running his calloused hand along the rough surface. "To most it's just stone, but to me it's life, in brick form. From dust we came, and to dust we shall return." He exhaled slowly, then added, "Justice, peace, they're worth something only when they preserve life. Without that, all our fighting, it's just noise." A loud buzzer interrupted the stillness. It blared through the compound like an air raid siren. "Dinner," Arda announced. He stood slowly, stretching his back. "You coming?" Sean didn't answer. He stayed on the bunk, staring at the wall, his mind racing with thoughts of the life he had left behind. In the dining hall, the chaos was even more intense. Dozens of prisoners had already gathered, some eating quickly, others causing trouble. The space echoed with voices yelling, utensils clanking, and trays being slammed onto tables. In the far corner, a notorious gang known as the Utah Bands moved as a unit, like wolves circling prey. Their leader, Rondo Abash, better known as Bash, and even more fearfully called Dark Lord, sat at the center of their group, like a king on a throne of violence. He wore his nickname like a crown, his reputation built on brutality. As the Utah Band circled the room, they zeroed in on a small group of inmates quietly eating their meal. Bash started with verbal taunts and insults meant to provoke. Then came the pushing, the threats, the laughter. One brave inmate, tired of the abuse, stood up and shouted back. The room fell eerily quiet. No one ever spoke back to Dark Lord. Bash's eyes narrowed, and a sinister grin crept across his face. In one swift motion, he pulled a pocket blade from his waistband and struck the defiant inmate across the face. Blood splattered onto the floor. Without hesitation, Bash stabbed him again, over and over. Screams broke out as other prisoners scrambled to get away. Another inmate tried to intervene, but was immediately restrained and beaten by the rest of the Utah Bands. The situation spiraled into mayhem. Guards rushed into the hall, tasers and batons in hand. "Everyone out," one of them yelled, his voice rising above the panic. After that, the wounded inmates were dragged to the infirmary, their moans of pain echoing down the hallway. The next morning, prison life resumed with its usual mechanical rhythm. A blaring alarm signaled the beginning of the day. Prisoners began their assigned tasks, sweeping corridors, cleaning toilets, or being bussed out for manual labor. Some loitered, lifting weights or walking laps around the yard, while others did all they could to avoid drawing attention to themselves. Arda nudged Sean, who had barely slept. "We'd better get moving before the guards drag us out," he said. Sean nodded, still not saying much, but followed him. As they stepped out of the ward, a prison guard stopped them. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded. Arda answered with silence, and Sean kept his head down. The guard frisked them, but found nothing, eventually letting them go with a harsh warning: move faster next time, unless you want trouble. Outside in the yard, Sean looked around in dismay. The compound was more oppressive in daylight, high concrete walls topped with razor wire, armed guards and towers scanning the grounds with cold, detached eyes. Sean had never seen anything like it. He had never even imagined that life could look this bleak. He wasn't a hardened criminal. He had made a mistake, one that cost him his freedom. Now he had to survive in a place where hope was a foreign concept. As the day wore on, Arda continued to offer pieces of wisdom, not forcefully, but gently, like planting seeds in dry soil. Sean listened more than he spoke, but his silence wasn't from apathy anymore. It was reflection. Something in Arda's words resonated with him. Maybe it was the way he spoke, with conviction, or the way he looked at the prison, not as a place of punishment, but of transformation. This place can break you, Arda said one afternoon. Or it can refine you, depends on what you let it do to your soul. Sean didn't answer, but this time, he nodded.